Hey, I wanted to make a video here today, and I have some notes even for it. But this is about the potentials of the future, or soothsaying, or you know, future predictions and so forth. And the point I want to make overall is that if you were to go back to 1850, let's say, and it go to about 18 let's say 1855 to 1930, which is about a 75-year period there, right? And you looked at around, and I saw somebody else did a TED talk like this. So if you looked around and saw the differences in the country and in the world from that time, you would see great big differences. We lived in little shacks and along dirt roads, and they went to skyscrapers and automobiles and cement, paved roads everywhere. And they went from no electricity to dark all night to the whole world was lit up, and it would be a tremendous during that 75-year difference, a tremendous difference in what life looked like. And then if you went from, let's say, 1935 to, um, you know, uh, let's say 2015, about a 75-year period right there, and looked at the differences at that during that period of time, they wouldn't seem, at least visually, quite as dramatic as the other previous 75 years. And now, what I want to do, what I'm talking about now, is what would the differences between, let's say, now, which is 2020, and if you go 75 years into the future to 2085, let's say, or what are the differences going to be coming up? How much different will it be in the next 75 years compared to the last 75 years, which it didn't seem as dramatic as the previous 75 years to that? Well, I mean, a lot of the differences that occurred in more recent times have been something like inward differences, such as, things you couldn't see apparently just looking around, like the population growth between 1935 and 2015 was a incredible population growth in the world. The worldwide, it went from like less than a billion people to over 7 billion people, stuff like that. And then there's things like computers and technology in that area. So the things that wouldn't be that you would have to look a little closer to understand the differences, the supply chain of foods and the international community and so forth. So I'm trying to see, when I'm looking for the next 75 years, I have several predictions, types of predictions. I can classify them. So I was going to do this one video, which is going to go with things that I see that may happen in the next 75 years, which I think are going to be mostly positive ideas and things that I think are almost inevitable in some cases, but in the short term. And like the first thing I think we can look at the coming up in the near future are simple things like changing the energy, how we produce and distribute energy. From what I understand, we're moving in a less centralized energy distribution, which means that people, instead of buying electricity off these wires that run along the lines for hundreds of miles or whatever, are going to be looking more at a local generation of energy. And they have several forms of local generations of energies. And we're moving toward renewable resources in energy, which means solar and wind and thermal and other forms of energy like that. And there's new forms of batteries being developed right now that are going to be so that if it doesn't shine, the sun doesn't shine every day, the batteries will be able to store enough electricity to power us through the median times. And then, I suppose if they totally run out of battery energy and they can't produce any more with wind or solar or whatever, you can go back to some of the old-fashioned forms of energy. But I believe that within 75 years in the future or less, we are going to produce our electricity in more localized ways and in renewable ways. Now, here's another thing that's going to change. Cars are going to change very soon. Automobiles. Of course, back in the 1850s, they used to take horses and carriages around and so forth. I think we're going to continue to drive cars, but they're primarily going to be electric cars, which are better than gasoline cars in a lot of ways, such as they don't break down as much, I guess, and of course they don't require pollution coming out of the tailpipe, and they're faster than gas-powered cars as well. And cars are going to become self-driving too. That's another big change that's going to be around probably within 10 years, and that is, it'll be a boon for the taverns and the bars out there in the world, because one of the things that are killing taverns and bars is the fact that we have these DUIs. Everybody's getting drunk driving arrests and thrown in jail and so forth. But in the future, if you have a self-driving car, you can crawl to your car, climb in, and say, "Take me home," and your car will take you home like a faithful old horse or something. And but it'll also change commuting. I mean, even if you're not getting all your work done at work quite ready, you want to get ready for work, and you want to get ahead of yourself, you can actually have a little desk in the back of your car, in the driver's seat, the passenger seat of your car, and do all your extra work on home. I don't even know if work's going to be the same in a lot of cases. I'm sure some places people will have to go to work anyway, but a lot of work is going to be done from home on the computer. More and more things can be done. And one of the things that people are fearing about automation is robotics taking over a lot of the grunt labor jobs. And that is to say, what job I do. Well, if you're someone who stocks shelves, for example, at a store, it's a pretty good bet that in 25 years they're going to have machines do that. Or if you're somebody who was a tool and die maker, that job is already pretty much gone, because they have machines that can drill holes 24 hours a day and never make mistakes and never get tired and never take breaks, or that kind of stuff. So this may have positive and negative effects. I mean, it'll increase the productivity and reduce the cost of products overall throughout the economy, but it also means that people won't have any jobs, so they won't be able to buy anything because they won't have any money. I mean, there's this guy, Andrew Chang, is his name, I think he was running for president, and he was suggesting that there be something in the future like a guaranteed universal income. If there's just not enough jobs for everybody to do, then there should be some sort of a tax, if there's still a high production, and there's more efficiency, then somehow people have to have ways of getting by, and so he's suggesting that there be a universal income. Well, that's a political thing. And we're fighting right now mentally, and I guess we haven't really come to the actual implementation of a political revolutions that are butting up against each other. And I'm talking about, it has to do with pure capitalism versus socialism, Right now we're in a mixed economy which is leaning toward more capitalism than socialism. And as I speak, a lot of people are rethinking that right in the Congress, as we're right now going through this crisis of the COVID-19 or coronavirus, which is supposed to kill massive amounts of people over as it runs its course. And people right now are having to stay home, in isolation and quarantine and so forth, and where they're trying to get people not to go into public places as much as possible. And this could be a difficulty, for the economy. But the government then is turning around and trying to say, well, we're going to try to do a stopgap measure to try to provide some sort of relief in food and rent money and so forth for those people who can't go to work. Well, 10 days ago, 6 months ago, that was unheard of. That was completely the government shouldn't be involved. And there's still guys that, like, this Rand Paul fellow in the Senate who are libertarians. They want to get rid of any kind of government assistance whatsoever. And this is a battle that's going to be fought. The young folks are all looking at it and saying, yeah, well, in the future, if there are no jobs, we're going to have to need a way to get, to be able to survive. If they're producing goods and people are making money, and they're hoarding the money into smaller and smaller pile. I mean, fewer and fewer people. A few really very rich people are collecting all the money and hoarding it in piles. Well, the government should be involved in helping to distribute that money more equally. I mean, this is one of the battles of the future coming up. Who's going to win that? I don't know. I suspect, though, that if the average people get smarted up, they will win. The socialists will win. But I don't know. I could be wrong. They maybe. But it does seem like every time we get too many people or too few people holding too much money, the economy crashes. Well, anyway, that's what we're looking at in the future is possibly the Andrew Yang's version of it, or something like that, where we all have a little bit of a guaranteed income so that we don't have to worry about starving. Now let's go on from there. Let's see. We have to think about what's happening as a human being as in the next few years, because there's the possibility exists. So there's three possibilities that I think exist right now for major changes in explaining and understanding what it is to be human. And first, I'll talk about the biological differences. They're right now doing biological studies and experimentation where they are able to find out what actually causes aging and old age and dying of old age going into the future, and has something to do with a bad gene replication. Your body replicates its every cell every 7 years, except for your neurons, they say. And one of the things that causes people to age is, the old cells die off and the new cells are replicated as the old cells, but the end of the DNA chain is not perfect. It's like what they say, frayed. Well, the fact that they're understanding this, what causes aging, also means that they might potentially be able to limit or reduce aging. So it's very possible that in the future, some people, or maybe, I don't know how many people, all the people, will live to be hundreds of years old, just biologically, because of the understanding of the biological processes of aging. So that my generation, it will miss out on it, but maybe the next generation or two generations away, if you're born, like my grandchildren might live to be 400, 500 years old, which could lead to other problems about overpopulation and so forth. But then there's another possibility about this, and that is cybernetics. Now, cybernetics goes in two different directions. There's the outward cybernetics, which is to say, and they're working on this right now, and they're talking about people who can replace their whole leg. As I just watched a video recently about a guy. He had his leg amputated, and they put on another leg, and he can consciously move his leg so he can walk. It's completely mechanical. That like the $1 Million Man or whatever, $6 million man. But he says that they've improved it since he had his leg put on, and now they say that you can actually feel your leg if you do a certain type of amputation. Well, I think this is leading toward major cybernetic changes. In other words, what they're understanding is that they can actually digitize your nerves and the messages that your brain sends to your nerves and put them into a machine. Well, if that's the case, they've been studying neurology and understanding more and more neurology, maybe, and this is a thought, that they possibly can take your entire mind and digitize it somehow and put your entire mind into a cybernetic body. Now, that's one thing that's, it seems pretty far-fetched to a lot of people right now, but the potentials for that are incredible. Because let's say you're injured or you're dying or you're getting old or you just feel like doing it, you could take your entire brain and download it into a cybernetic or a body with a human being. And that human being, it won't age. And if anything breaks or gets damaged, you just replace it, And you can live to be hundreds of years old. But not only that, if you can digitize the brain, then you might be able to send it at the speed of light to someplace on the other side of the world in just a second, and go download. They can have like a cybernetic body on the other side of the world. You could just go through the wires or in the off a satellite as a digital brain and download it into another cybernetic body in Japan, and you can go to Japan in 1 second. Now, would that be you? If you're just copying your brain? Well, there's another direction also that cybernetics is going into, and that is nano directions, where they're actually building tiny little machines that they can put into your body, which cybernetically correct mistakes within your body, so that you, like I say, it could be at a microscopic level where it goes after you, correcting DNA problems and any other physical problems that you may have, and you can live hundreds of years that way and have these nano bots inside of your body. So, cybernetics has got, these things seem pretty far-fetched right now, but they're coming fairly soon, I think. Well, anyway, that's my first video. I may go into a more depressing and less positive one in the future, than my next one.